everyone, it's Professor Hall, and today we are going to talk about MLA formatting for in-text citations. So I'm going to pull up a couple different pieces of research as we go. Here's my first one that I found, and we will talk about how to cite them in your paper. So these are also called parenthetical citations. You might hear other people use that term. I'm going to change my font here. Sorry, guys. Make it bigger. There we go. So these are also called parenthetical citations because they happen inside parentheses. So if you have another teacher who says you're missing your parenthetical citations, you'll know what they mean. Last name, page. Okay. They look kind of like that. They have the last name and then the page number. So that is our first rule is that in-text citations come at the end of a sentence before the period. There are other types of citation methods and formatting where they don't. They'll come like after an author's name, but for our purposes, that's not how we are formatting things. So, after the sentence, but before the period. 2, in-text citations. If you are doing a direct quotation, if you have quotes, come after the quotation marks. 3, the basic format is this: the author's last name and then the page number without any punctuation in between. I find I don't understand quite why. There are videos for you guys about how to do the works cited page. I've linked a video for you for that in your class, but for some reason, those, I think people use citation generators to help them figure out how to do it the correct way. These, I get crazy stuff. I'll give you like a quick example. Let's say Thomas Fulton claimed, quote, cigarettes are good for your health. Okay. And then what I'll have sometimes is it'll say like, somebody will put something like, Thomas Fulton, comma, page 28. They'll have it like that. Or I'll get sometimes the URL, so the website, right? So I'll have the end quote there, and then it'll be like www.crazythingstosay.org/hey, what is this or Fulton quote, like whatever the thing is, right? And you don't want to have that. It's very messy. It's very confusing to read. So all you want to do, let's say we did use this quote from Thomas Fulton. We just have his last name, no comma, no page, no PG, nothing. That's it. Fulton 28. Okay. Now, you might be asking yourself, Professor Hall, the thing is, a lot of my stuff I'm finding online and it doesn't have a page number. So, if you have a website, you can just use the author's last name. Now, some professors might kind of combine formats. There's another type of format called APA. MLA stands for Modern Language Association. APA is American Psychological Association. They want you to have a paragraph number if there's no page. So let's say that this quote from Thomas Fulton was from a website. There's no page number. Well, what I would do then is have the same thing like that, and then just his last name, Fulton. Okay, so far so good. We have one with the author's last name and page, and then we have one where there's no page numbers, so we just use the last name. So there are other rules, but this is basically kind of the same idea. If there are two or more authors, we use both their last names with the word and then the page number. Now, no, the and does not go in quotes, but I put that there just so you can see. So let's go over to a piece of research where we have two people talking. So this is written by Mario Alejandro Ariza and Kate Stein. So it's going to be Ariza and Stein. And what page do I want my quote to be from? Let's say I'm taking it from here. Page numbers came up on here before. Oh, there it is. Let's say it's from here. Okay, this is page 33. So I have this. I don't know if this will copy. I just want to say one more time how to spell their names. Ariza and Stein. Okay. All right, so some researchers believe, quote, let's see if it pastes. Yes, it did. It pasted weird, but that's okay. We can fix that. Some researchers believe these systems work great, etc. And that is two people, Ariza and Stein, and it was on page 33. So that's what that looks like. Notice no period here. The period goes at the end. This goes outside the quotes, so it's after the quotation. And the same thing would be true if I decided to paraphrase this. We still get that in-text citation afterwards. So some researchers believe that when systems have flaws, how can I say malfunction differently? Let's look at synonyms. Failures and breakdowns. I like that. Failures or breakdowns. These incidents instead of events cause problems with normal operations. Okay, it's still from Ariza and Stein. Now, I put Ariza's name first because Ariza was listed first on that piece of research. So let me grab another piece and let's see who's listed there. Okay, so here we have three people, and they are listed as Lena Simpler, Florian Kretschmer, and Thomas Ertl. When you have three or more names, here I don't have the page numbers, so we'll keep that in mind. I'm just going to grab a quote from them. And I'm gonna, this is something that you can do too. You don't want to get this wrong, what their names are, because that could be plagiarism if you get that incorrect, if you don't have the right people listed, because you're attributing things to their source. So, number 6, if you have 3 or more authors, use the first person's last name followed by et al. Now, et al stands for et alias, which means all the rest. And that is a Latin phrase that we don't use that often. But But here it can be quite helpful because sometimes, I mean, there's just 3 people listed here, but sometimes you might get a piece of research that has 7 or 8 people on it. Sometimes if there's research being done at a university, there are students and professors involved, as well as people overseeing what they're doing. Sometimes all of their names are listed. So let's take the quote that I grabbed. The scientists explain. I'm going to do, it's a direct quotation, so it needs the quotation marks around it. It's not a paraphrase. And then we are going to put Simperler et al. And there's, whoops, I did that wrong, at all. There we go. There's no page number here, so it's just the last names. Now let's say that this happened to be on, I don't know, page 105, okay? Then it would be Simpler et al. 105. And it would look like that. Okay. 7. If there is more than one page, use a dash between the first and last page. Now that sounds complicated, but basically what we're talking about is it would look like this. Smith 82 to 87, right? It shows the page range. So I just clicked on another article. This is Floods, Fires, and Crashes by Peter Kurlitzek. The full PDF is over here on the right. So it is a range of pages. Now, a lot of times a range of pages can be, well, it's really 2 different situations. One, that you want something that you're quoting that goes like from this page to this page, right? Now I'm highlighting weird stuff here, but let's go down one. There's a lot of pictures. Okay, so let's say that we're quoting something that's on page 20 and also on page 21. We would have, there was a flood in Trinity in 1918 as Kurlitzek. Did I spell that right? Yes. Explains, and then I have this quote. I'm going to put in ABC just for where the quote would go, and then that's 82 to 83. Okay? Now, if I want to do a summary, not just a quote that goes from one page to another, but let's say I'm summarizing this whole article. In his article on floods, fires, and crashes, amazing, crashes, Peter Kurlitzek describes various disasters that have happened throughout the history of the United States. And maybe I have a couple more sentences about that. Well, after that, I would still put last name. And then I would put maybe the whole thing if I'm summarizing the whole thing. 82 to 87. So it would look like that. Now, you can imagine that sometimes we combine these. So if there were still 3 or more people writing that article, let's say that it was Jones and Kurlitzek. I picked a very difficult spelled name. 82 to 87. If 2 people had written it, if it would be Kurlitzek and all the rest, at all 82 to 87, right? So the last thing here that I want to say is that you may have something that doesn't have an author. So we looked at what you do if you don't have page numbers. What do you do if there is no author listed. My instinct is to tell people you don't do anything. You don't use that piece of research. If there's no author listed, it may be for a reason. Now, that is different than our next scenario, which is when you have a corporate author. So we'll talk about what that is in a moment. But if there's no author listed, or if it's a fake name like Sweet Girl 25 or something like that, Nintendo Lover 182 or 1982 or something. If there's no author listed, there may be a reason for that, and it may not be the most reliable. But let's say that we have something that we know is reliable. It's in our library databases. And if I can go back, I don't know if there's one here without one. Oh, so yeah, this one, Deadly Flooding in Japan, is in the New Scientist. It's probably just a little blurb. It looks like, yeah, it's a page plus a picture. There's no author. So the title of the article is Deadly Flooding in Japan. It's not that long of a title, but typically what you do is you will use the shortened title or the full title if it's short already. Instead of the author's last name. Now, mostly I find that these don't have page numbers, but we'll do it both ways. So we'll call it Deadly Flooding. You notice it is an article. I have it in quotation marks. Deadly Flooding, and there's no pages. Okay, that looks like that. Or let's say that there were pages. Deadly Flooding. Let's say it's on page 7. Okay, so it looks like that. If it's a longer work, if it's like, say, maybe it's a play by someone who's anonymous, and that play is called Having Fun at Breakfast, we would do it like that. But if that play had an author, you would not. So if you happen to find an article for this class that you're not sure about using because it doesn't have an author, just run it past me, because a lot of times it might be a corporate author and you're not aware of it, which brings us to number 9 and our last one. So what do you do if a corporation, group, or organization has published something, but there is no single author listed? Well, it's pretty easy. You just use the name of the organization or their initials if they have them. So for example, aw, so cute. Look at the little kittens and the lizard. Let's say that I'm quoting something from these people from their site on animal cruelty. There's no one person listed, right? And their page is loading very slowly. But it's the SPCA of Upstate New York. SPCA UNY. Those are their initials for their organization. So what I would do, and again, here there's no page numbers, right? But you might find a document like a PDF or something that has some. So I want to look at animal cruelty. I just couldn't do that. But let's take this quotation from them. And my introduction to my quote is going to be something like, many animals are available for adoption in our area. The SPCA of Upstate New York writes, and then their quote. Did they call it forever? No, they didn't. They called it forever. A lot of times I see it spelled like fur. So that's the quote. And then we'd have SPCA UNY in our parentheses. I'm going to zoom in on that a little bit. Sorry, guys. Okay, so it looked like that. So let's say that same thing was from the Red Cross and it was on page 5 of a PDF. I'm just going to I could go to the Red Cross page, but I don't want to right now. So then it would look like this. American Red Cross, let's say, and then a space, and then page 5. And then I, of course, have to change this. Now, they don't do pet adoption, but just to give you guys an example. Another example is something from the government, a government agency. So if you have that, I'll find one for you guys right now. Okay, so this is a website for the United States Department of Justice. About getting help if you're in a domestic violence situation. They also have things about sexual assault, dating violence, stalking, and numbers that you can call. So let's say that I want this definition from this government website. It's long. Let's say I want part of this definition. Okay, so I just want that part. So no page numbers, right? Because it's not a document. It's from the Department of Justice. So I'm going to introduce this by saying the government has agencies which can protect and help victims of violence. They explain. And then my quote. Okay, so same thing, no page numbers, U.S. Department of Justice. I'm not putting the whole thing in, right? I'm not writing out United States Department. I just have it kind of shortened up a little bit. You could have USDJ, but I think that might be confusing in this case. And then our period goes at the end. So that is how you do it. So we have talked about all of the different ways to cite. I'm going to run through them again. If you have one author and a page number, it looks like this. Smith, 61. If you have 2 or more authors, it would look like this. Jones and Smith, 61. If you have 3 or more authors, it looks like this. Smith et al., 61. If you have no page numbers, it looks like this. Smith. If you have no author, you use the shortened version of the article. MLA and you. Like that. If you have a range of pages, Smith, 61 to 90. And if you have a corporate author, it's going to be the name of the corporation, possibly with some shortened version. So let's say it's just Microsoft or something that has initials like YMCA of Niagara. Put it like that. Okay, so that's that. Now, there is one last thing. You thought we were done, but we weren't. When to use these. Number 1, after a direct quotation. Those are most of the examples that I showed you today. That means you are taking the exact words from your source. You also need them after a paraphrase because those are still not your words. Or I'm sorry, those are your words but not your ideas. Same thing with a summary. Now, you can do a summary in a couple different ways. You can have it at the end of the paragraph. I typically like to put it a couple times in the paragraph to show the whole thing is not from me. So those are still not your ideas. You're summarizing them. There are typically two ways that people do this in the past. So I just want to show you both. Okay, if you have the author's last name in the sentence, you can only put the page number at the end in the citation. So what that looks like is this. I'm going to take that same quote I just grabbed. Okay. So the U.S. Department of Justice, that's the corporate author, right, says, and then I'm going to have my quote. And let's say that's on pages 6 to 7. Okay. Now, there's my parenthetical with just that, and there is just that. Here is the problem with this. If you don't have this in, then you do it the way I just showed you. So if you just say the government says, and you're not naming them specifically. And this is how other people will teach you to do this. Okay. Now, the problem is this. Many times you don't have page numbers because you're using internet sources. So what that would look like if you didn't put both in is this. And I'm going to take off the highlighting. Okay, so the U.S. Department of Justice says, quote, the term domestic violence includes felony and misdemeanor crimes, etc. There's an error there, but that's okay. All right, so here's the problem. Your teacher, myself included, but other teachers as well, are going to be looking for evidence that you have cited your sources correctly. They're going to be looking for those in-text citations. And if they don't see them very often, they might think that you have plagiarized because it doesn't look like you've cited your sources. So you've given this part, this is called attribution. Have that in my other thing about quotation marks. And this attribution is telling them who said the quote that you're giving. But you can kind of see that parentheses stop your eye. That's why we use them. We use them to stop your eye to focus on just that information by itself outside of the sentence. So I just don't normally tell people to do it this way, even though that is technically the correct way to do it. A lot of the examples I gave you above have the last name in this signal phrase or in this beginning introduction to the quote, or the speech tag, whatever you want to call it. The introduction to the quote must be there. You can also not have just this, okay? Then it's very confusing. But I just would warn you, and I would just do it one of the ways that we just talked about. Even though, yes, that is the correct way, and you might even have teachers later who want you to do it that way. For the most part, I don't find that that's true. They really want you to have, if the author and the page are available, put both. If there's no page numbers, just the author. There's no author, the shortened title, and a page if it's available, the range of pages, and then the corporate author. And I think that if you have that, you'll be less likely to possibly get in trouble or have to have a discussion about possible plagiarism. So keep that in mind. And that is it for in-text citations. I have a different video that I'm posting for you guys about works cited pages, not from me, but from somebody else, because I think they explained it really well. So that's it. If you have questions about this, just let me